Morning, everyone. Welcome to the Tuesday morning meeting of the BOCC. You have two of us today. Commissioner Weber's on vacation. Someplace warm, I understand. So if you want to, we'll start with flag salute if you want to join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. I'll ask Commissioner Mortensen for his review of the minutes.
Good morning, everyone. It's always interesting when there are only two commissioners because we're never quite sure what's gonna pass, right? So I did review the minutes of the activities last week and I moved to approve those minutes.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the minutes. Any questions, comments, changes? Seeing none, I will call for a vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Run down to the consent agenda. Agreements, contract bid awards. Number one is actually completion letter on to specialized pavement markings for the 2023 work. Final cost of that 2023 project was $886,756.60. The next two are easements we're still working on Cloverdale realignment project. I think we're down to 3 left in that package. We have a signed agreement on to the interagency reimbursement agreement with the Washington State Administrative Office of the Courts for extraordinary expense reimbursement for clerk related costs associated with the Blake decision. This was reviewed by legal staff. It was actually, I had the copy sent to the other two commissioners and I was given authority to sign that change, that amendment. Number 5 is a change order to the contract with Quigg Brothers. This is on the Ostrander Road project. It's covers the cost of furnishing and installing an expansion joint. The cost increase is $32,467.88. That cost is borne by the Beacon Hill Water and Sewer District. They're the ones that needed that change, so they're the ones incurring the cost. And then we have a personal service agreement with Community Mediation Center. We've extended that for 2 years. We did 1 year in 2023. We did a $40,000 contract. It looks like in 2023, I asked for some numbers on that. They ended up with 59 referrals this past year. 32 actually came from the court and then 27 from non-court. 34, reading through there, 34 loss of contract, failure to pay fees resolved without mediation. 34 of those were resolved without mediation, and 22 were completed. 3 are still in progress. So we've extended that contract for 2 additional years. They seem to be working pretty well with the courts on that. Resolutions. All resolutions 7, 8, 9, and 10 are projects that Public Works will be taking on. The first part of deciding to take on a project is a resolution of the county to do it. And so that's what these are. Number 7 is resolution for county road project number 808 for the Powell Road drainage improvement. That's a project, about a $80,000 project, of which the county road fund will be on the hook for 26,000 of that. Resolution, Cloverdale Road Drainage Improvement Project, to replace an undersized culvert. That's another project estimated about $80,000. County will be on the hook for 26,000 of that. Owl Creek Bridge replacement for engineering and construction. The total cost of that project is a little over 7.2 million. The county responsible for 50,000. So a lot, the great majority of that is covered through a grant. County Road Project number 805, the Allender Road Repair Project. Total cost is estimated to be about 305,000, and that's totally on the county to fix that one. So once again, the resolution, they identified projects that will move forward, and that starts with us passing a resolution to do that. So that's what those are. Board correspondence, a letter dated to Robert Sudar expressing the commissioner's appreciation for his 30+ years of service on the planning commission. I think it's actually 32 years. We reappointed Kirk Rowland to the Public Facilities District Board. A letter from the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission regarding Weir 3 seepage monitoring improvements. These are all things up on the SWIFT project. We appointed Tim Shea to the Planning Commission to a 4-year term that expires in January of 2028. And we reappointed Charles Davidson to the Boundary Review Board. This is a 4-year term that expires January 2028. And we had vouchers in the amount of $945,394.04. That's the consent agenda. Questions?
I have a comment on item number 6, the Community Mediation Center. Although it's not a fully analyzed situation, there are many circumstances where people come to us and say, you really should do this because it'll save you the money in the long run. Well, most of the time I translate a lot of that into blackmail. If you don't let me off the hook, I'm going to cause you more trouble. I really detest that. In this case, we have kind of the opposite. If you think about it, for the $40,000 we paid, it worked out to $1,818 averaged over the successful mediation exercises. And imagine you going to a lawyer and having to getting by with only $1,800. I don't think so. And so that's cost effective. And then if you take a look at everyone who actually applied and went to there, it's even a smaller number. It's $700. So you not only save yourself, then you really reduce the backlog on the courts. And so this is a win-win situation as best as I can see.
Yeah, I've been happy with it too. I think they've done a good job over there. I asked for numbers when it came up because we talk all the time. We like to hear what our money's, what your money is doing. And so I was glad that we got those this morning. As Commissioner points out, it's a lot cheaper using them than it is running a couple fighting with attorneys and stuff. So
because the attorneys seem to find more things to fight about.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the consent agenda as is.
Okay. We have a motion on the floor to approve the consent agenda. Any further questions, comments? Okay, I see none. I will call for a vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. We have one motion item, Public Works.
Good morning, Susan Eugenius, County Engineer. We have one motion item we're bringing forth today, which is a local agency agreement with PBS Engineering to provide as-needed unmanned aerial vehicle survey services. This is a not-to-exceed contract of $50,000. We have not had a contract to provide these services in the past. This has been a fast-developing technology as drones excuse me, they don't like the words drones because everybody associates them with war. So unmanned aerial vehicles is the preferred term. And people use these more and more commonly in the public works civil engineering field to take surveys and to do inspections. So we decided we wanted to try this out for emergency response, for landslides, so we can do some reconnaissance before we send people out to do repairs. Also to take the surveys of those situations as they occur, which will make our design and corrections easier. They are also very useful when you need to survey a large area such as a landfill or a park where you need to calculate, and we use them up at the landfill to calculate how much airspace we've filled in a year. People use them on parks when you're doing a large scale survey, where you are doing projects that don't have to be surveyed to the nth degree. So that is, we're looking to try this out to see if it's useful for our department and we can use it as we need it.
I know it's much more prevalent. They use them to track the tootle and all the changes in that. It's crazy.
It's pretty amazing. Like,
Go ahead.
seems like we have the time, and my curiosity gets the best of me, particularly when I have someone whose answers I trust. What is the accuracy of these instruments?
Oh, I'm not a surveyor. I know I read it. It's like 1/10 of a foot.
I didn't hear you, sorry.
1/10 of a foot, I believe, is what it is. I don't quote beyond that. I'd have to go back and look at all the
Bill missed the
documentation.
first, is there a number there?
There is a number, 1/10, I believe is what it is, but I can check.
Did you said 1/10
Of a foot, yes.
of a foot? Okay.
It might be more accurate than that. I'd have to go back and read the documentation.
No, but that leads me to the next question, which is, any instrumentation has to go through a calibration process. Those things that you pay attention to on these contracts also?
Yes, so when we use it up at the landfill to do the airspace, we do it every 6 months, and our survey crew has documentation. They set out X marks the spot, essentially, where we know the vertical, horizontal, so we all three dimensions, and we know that it's at this point at this elevation, and we do several of them, and then we calibrate their survey to match those points.
Okay. So you go out to X and you actually put in a differential GPS receiver and all that and try and get that down to as accurate, and then you match it to what they tell you.
Yes, and that
You
is.
do that.
Yes, our survey department sets hubs in the ground so that they can match up the surveys. They call it ground truthing.
Yep, that was my note here. Ground truth is a question mark.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. And then this is all in the optical range, or do you look at, is there LiDAR in there?
It depends on what you request. This particular can do both LiDAR and the optical. So we received 6 respondents and they had various capabilities for our request for qualifications. So we narrowed it down to this being the choice they had based on the number of vehicles they had and the staffing that they had. So they have 4 or 5 different vehicles, several different types, and multiple operators, so that it wasn't a firm that if John Smith decided to leave, they would no longer be able to provide the service.
is there, I hear the words, but I don't know what they really translate into nowadays, GPR, ground penetrating radar. Does that help us in anything? Like when you go out, you said that based on a 50% plan, because there's so many unknowns and that's your best guess.
So this does not include ground penetrating radar. Those are usually run by geotechnical firms or a materials testing company, and is not a technology that's associated with this type of surveying service.
Okay, how do they do it? Just by drilling a core or?
So, and when we do geotech projects with geotech, we take numerous borings and cores along the corridor. For example, on a bridge project, we would take at least 4, 2 on each side where the abutment is estimated to be. And we do those for geotechnical walls and during landslides. And sometimes we will establish a fixed core that has some monitoring equipment in it. So, but we normally just take cores along a project.
Does anybody ever use, you can stop me anytime. Does anybody use air gun technology or something like that to cause a minor explosion and watch the seismic? Because that'll tell you a lot too.
We have never used that technology.
Okay, one of the reasons this interests me, because in this area, we have such diversity, and I keep hearing of material, and I keep hearing about landslides, and at some point, if you know that there's nothing solid there for 100 feet in the vertical, it kind of frames your ultimate expense for a solid repair. Yeah.
So yes,
We need a grant for that, right?
sure.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate your indulgence, everybody.
Is there incidents over the past 12 months or something that you would have used this for? Just out of curiosity?
So we have, oh God, don't make me say this. We have had a fairly calm past 12 months. So we have not, but incidents where we could have used it in the past is when those culverts washed out on Tower Road. We could have used it flying up that corridor. Initial response landslides are another often used. It gives us the ability before we take a survey to have the drone fly over the slide to see if there's something that's still moving or might possibly come down before we send emergency responders in. Or in our case, that's the road crew to get it cleared out and reopen the roadway. So those are situations where we would have probably used this.
Perfect.
Despite your own admonition, you used the word drone.
Oh, I did. I'm sorry.
Did we have a motion or not?
Not yet.
Okay. I just.
I thought I'd distract you enough and then,
Yeah.
yeah. Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the local agency agreement as has been discussed by staff.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor to approve this contract. Comments, questions?
Good morning. I guess, is there, would something like this have a use for, like, if we had any major fires or anything going on in the county?
So yes, emergency responders do use UAVs to check fires and structural stability. One of the respondents showed us this video of him flying through a building, inspecting structural members within the building to determine if it was safe for people to enter. They also can attach heat sensors to the bottom of these vehicles. One was playing with doing gas emission sensors, which would be something you could fly over the landfill, let's say, and test for different emissions of gases.
Okay, so is there a rough estimate, what it costs each time they use this? Or is it based on the amount of time they spend, or how's that? Is it by the hour?
So it is at an hourly rate when they're out there, plus the processing time, depending on what you're getting. So when we fly the landfill, it's $5,000 to $6,000 a flight, with them giving us survey data that we can then use to create a surface, a model of the landfill surface.
So when they do the landfill, how long are they taking to do that roughly? Is that like a half a day?
Half a
or-
day.
Okay,
And then they have time in the office processing all the data.
okay. Thank you.
Well, my question is, since we seem to use this so infrequently, is there possibility that another county, we could go in with another county to purchase this or have this, because it would half the cost to us?
So this cost, this 50,000, we're only going to pay it if we use it. The only county that I currently know of that has a drone as part of their survey group is on the east side, and they do very large corridor projects. And so that's how they survey. And they also have a lot of landslides and floods that they send these out on.
Okay, so you're not talking about purchasing this. This is just a lease from, to use it.
This
Correct.
is just calling up a company, we'd like this done, and they send out a pilot and their vehicle
I
and they do
see.
the service.
So if you were to take and to justify the cost, compare it to what we do now without the drone, whatever you want to call it. Compare it to a person actually doing the surveying and actual rescue and whatever. What would the difference of that cost be between using that and personnel to go out and take care of the situation?
So we don't have exact costs, but it would take a survey crew of 2, probably several days to survey the surface of the landfill. And then we'd still have the processing. So it's a time saver when you're doing large open areas. When you get trees in there, it's more efficient to actually have a person do it.
Well, I can understand the time because that would be totally apparent, but what about the monetary outlay?
I don't have those numbers. I won't lie to you. Let's say a survey crew cost $80, $100 an hour. Let's say $100 an hour. So they're 8-hour days. So that's 800 a day. Couple of days out there, you're 1,600, approaching 2,000, and then the office processing. So it's probably a similar cost, but I would have
Similar
to run,
cost.
I'd have to run the numbers to actually give
Okay,
you a
and
true answer.
Considering it's a similar cost, which would be the most accurate between the two?
So the accuracy, I honestly couldn't tell you. I am not a surveyor.
Okay,
So I just listen to what my surveyor tells me.
okay, thank you very much.
There's also an intangible in there, which is you can see a lot more from up top. I may want to look for this, but oh, what is that over there? And then there is the risk if the drone hits a tree. I mean, if the UAV hits the tree, no problem. But if a man falls and breaks a leg, that's a problem. So they're just,
Yeah. I've seen them, they kind of develop almost 3D maps
Mhm.
too, which I don't think a survey crew could provide that to you.
So we can develop a
Can they do
3D
that?
map. Yes, that's all in the processing that you do in the office, because we develop a surface to make it into a 3D map.
actually plan on that. That's a good point. I don't know what the cell size of their observations, but a surveying team is going to go to 10 spots. The UAV is going to have everything. And I think post-processing, you can say, what is it over here?
Yes, and that is one of the processing things. You go out there, because every once in a while there'll be a weird glitch in the data, and that's because they run a UAV while we're actively filling that landfill. So you'll get some weird glitches,
Oh.
which is the equipment that you have to remove, which also is on the landfill a difference. The survey crew out on an active landfill surface is much more dangerous than the UAV flying over.
By the way, I thought that was a good question that was asked. It's good to take a look at all conditions and
And that is part of the reason why this is let's try this to see how it improves our efficiency, what it does to our cost. And that's why we went with a smaller contract, and we don't know. We may use it a few times and hate it. We may use it a few times and think it's the wave of the future and be coming back saying, hey, we want to get a couple of our surveyors to be licensed operators and go that route. But it's what we're looking into.
yeah, of long-term particular interest is the gas. I don't know, do they do chromatography up in the air? Anyhow, knowing like if there's a fire like there was one at the landfill, looking at that and saying, oh my God, you realize what's coming out of there right now is so much carcinogen or something like that. You want to know those things as soon as you can without sending somebody there to, ooh, that's not so good.
Yeah.
I just had a clarification question. We use drones for the landfill. Is this a different company or?
So this is a different company that's a standalone contract. We have been using the drones up at the landfill through our engineering contract. They've been getting a sub to go and fly these, and it gives us the levels that way. So this
Are
could
they
be
gonna
used.
take over the landfill, this company, or is it, you're gonna stick with the other company?
So we just started a new contract with the engineering company, and that is still under discussion which way we're going to jump. So
Okay, thanks.
I've heard enough comments. I got to ask one more question. Is this in all cases replacing existing survey services, or will it be in addition to?
So this will be in addition to, this will be in special circumstances. We use this instead of our internal survey crew. So our normal projects, we will still be using our survey crew to go out and get the information like one of the things we do when we're doing a bridge or a culvert, we have to flag the ordinary high water mark. We have to flag the wetlands, and the survey crew goes out and picks up all those flags. That will still be done by our survey crew, and a lot of the smaller topos will still be running it through our survey crew. So this would be an additional survey service that we would be using instead of the survey crew, but they still have, trust me, they still have plenty of work to do.
Okay, so I guess if it's in addition to, you're basically still gonna have to run the survey crew, even though you're doing this. So both services have to happen in most cases?
So in these cases, when they're not taking just aerial photos for us, we would have to have the survey crew go out and set up those ground truth spots. Whether we're doing it internally or with a contract, we would always have to set up those ground truth spots.
Okay, so I guess is the drone services going to actually save you money in that process, or is it just basically a new service on top of what you have to do anyway?
That is why we set this contract up, to see if it's going to save us money moving forward, or it's going to end up costing us more.
Okay,
I don't know until I try.
okay.
Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote. Those in favor
Aye.
also vote aye.
Thank you.
Susan. Okay. We have, before I head into public comment, next week, we have no meetings. Dennis is on vacation. I'm in Washington DC, so you got the week off next week. I think that's it. I'm trying to think if there's anything else.
Will clerk of the board be back next week?
Well,
Will the clerk of the board be back next week?
no.
Okay.
You remember she's in Washington DC too.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
How stupid of me. Thank you.
And we'll provide a report of that. I'm probably more looking forward to spending a couple days with our lobbyist, CFM, David and them, and just getting some personal appointments rather than the conference group appointments. That's probably what I'm looking forward to more, and we'll see how that goes. I have a few specific items that are on my mind for that, so we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I'm particularly interested in both your impressions of how useful a trip over there is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I'll be straightforward with those. I can tell you from the past, I'm not so big on the conference stuff, because that's a lot of well, it can be. Yeah. It's a lot of good old boys getting together and doing things. I'm more I'm more in tune with spending some time with a person that has connections, and you just go out and you do some stuff. So
Yeah.
but
and-
we'll see how that goes.
And from
Not to
that-
say there's not useful information that comes out of those. There is, but you kind of have to pick and choose and look for it.
Yeah, I went several years ago at the insistence of some other people. You must go to a NACO national conference, and you learn all kinds of stuff. So I agreed to go. And it was one of the worst experiences around, the utter slovenliness of everything. And I had hoped there to see some presentations and how we could do things in a better way here. And all I heard was the usual, look at me, I was able to get more taxpayer money. I'm a good guy. And obviously, you know how I feel about that. So that didn't work too well
Yeah.
for me. And believe me, right now I'm being sort of polite about my impressions.
Well, I'll be straight up with you when I get back.
Oh, yeah, that's
Okay. We'll open it up to comments. I'll let you sit down before I got you back up again.
I'm not sure I like his t-shirt though, do you?
What the heck, dude?
Yeah, I mean,
You're on a board now, so you can't wear the shirt?
yeah, exactly. I've become part of the problem. I joined the man. So, this is timely because the lobbyists that you're talking about, I had a chance to see that guy actually
Did ya?
in person. Yeah, I only ever seen him up giving little things on the screens at some of these things. Pretty knowledgeable guy, and lives in Vancouver too. Not a home in Washington DC. Probably has one there, but at least his residence is in Vancouver.
Yeah.
However, the part that kind of sank into me afterwards, and thinking about it, is the lobbyist goes to our representatives. Like he talks to Glusenkamp, Murray, Cantwell. That's the people he lobbies to.
And he also works with departments
So, okay.
like Army Corps and different
Well,
things. But
I
yeah,
find it very interesting that, and I know it's party how things go, but I found it kind of interesting that we have to have a lobbyist to petition to our already elected representatives. And especially like Glusenkamp, she should be, we shouldn't need a lobbyist to talk to her at least.
Yeah.
And Murray and Cantwell, well, who knows what words go into their ears, it's hard to tell, but I found that to be kind of curious. Was we're hiring a lobbyist to talk to the people, to our own representatives.
well, and sometimes they help you get access to some of these areas where you don't usually get. Now, Glusenkamp Perez, she has an office right down here. I got to spend 30 minutes with her. I've been back to Washington DC as part of credit unions, and I think got to see Cantwell once and never Murray.
Hmm.
They're tough to get into.
Yeah,
And I think we pay them for their expertise, or at least in my view, if I'm paying him, I want to know when I go back there that he has good contacts and he knows, so I'm not wasting a lot of time that we can get in and do things. So I agree with you that we should be able to do some of that ourselves, but sometimes they have a deeper level of knowledge, working knowledge with them that is worth the money. Not always, but you have to have the right person.
yeah.
It's interesting that the general mentality out there with government and grants and all that is such that they make no distinction at all between what I would call an act of God, like the blowing of Mount St. Helens, as opposed to someone that wants a bridge to nowhere kind of thing. And the lobbyists help keep that priority in mind. And they have to span not only the elected, the senator and House representative, they've got to talk to the Army Corps of Engineers in the case. Like we really should have been dredging the Cowlitz on basically just a calendar.
Yeah.
And that hasn't really happened because bad decisions are being made, and the lobbyist is a reminder to everybody and a conduit between the Army Corps and the representatives. It's
So in your example, then, I guess the lobbyist isn't really getting the job done then, are they? Because if they
Again,
were getting the job done, then we
Oh.
would have the Cowlitz would be getting dredged, right? We would be
Well-
moving that sediment up above. We'd be like some little ants up there, and it seems like an impossible task, but if we'd have been doing it all these years, we probably wouldn't have that threat of all that stuff washing right straight down the river, right?
That is correct, but we did not have lobbyists. We were City of Longview had lobbyists before we had lobbyists. And we started the lobbyists about 6 years ago, or maybe only 5. And unfortunately, these things it's kind of like a new kid that joins a ball team. It'll take a while before people will provide you respect.
And it's incumbent on us that we use them for the right purposes. I can point out, well, I won't, but I can tell you different entities and stuff that use them just to seek money. And my deal on just chasing money.
Yeah.
I want solutions, not just money, but there's people that just want them to chase money. So it's incumbent on us to ask them for the right things. And that's where you guys can play a role too. You got to keep us on track and what we really want. Our colleague talks about a bridge to nowhere. I can give you one. My place over in Idaho, there's a bridge called the Dent Bridge. It's named after a senator or a rep for many years back in there. And it's this beautiful big suspension bridge. It's like a mini San Francisco bridge. It's this beautiful thing. You go over it and 2/10 down a mile, you're on a gravel road to nowhere,
Wow.
and it's just this huge where you could have you seen the old where they do the logging bridges so a truck could get over, you could have got by with that, right?
Yeah.
But that's what you got to be careful.
Gotta ask for the right thing.
The very frustrating thing is we're so far downstream that even when you point out the obvious, like to me, that was an obvious example, and the dredging is an obvious example. Once somebody points out that you're about to do something bad, let's say, or not do the right thing, it should be self-evident and just get going, but it doesn't work that way, unfortunately.
Any others?
Well, I guess I got a couple questions. If you're going to Washington DC, how many other commissioners, I guess other counties, I'm interested, like, if they have 3 commissioners, do they 2 or 3 commissioners from other counties go? Or
You know-
just, are they limited to 1, or how does that work?
Well, I think it's up to each county kind of decides what they want to do. I got a list of all the people from Washington State that will be there and of the names I recognize, and it doesn't look like every county's sending somebody, but it looks like probably one from each county is going.
Okay,
I mean, of the counties where I recognize the name and know, like, this guy is in Thurston. It's the only Thurston guy I see, although I think the list, a lot of, we have, what do we have, 38 counties,
9.
39.
39, there's not 39 people from Washington going there. A lot of it's Wasack staff. So a lot of counties aren't sending anybody.
Okay,
If it helps any, the only time I did go, I was impressed with how many people actually attended. It was easily upwards of 1,500 and,
Yeah, from all across, yeah, it's.
whole nation.
It's, yeah, countrywide, so there'll probably be a lot of people there. But I just saw the list from Washington yesterday and it's,
Well, I believe in the lobbyist, using a lobbyist for the betterment and the needs of the county. Cause there's no way you guys got the time to be trying to cater to all of our representatives and figure out what you could get, what kind of help you can get from them. I do have a question on one of the correspondence about the seepage monitoring at SWIFT 2. Is there any problems going on there?
not that I'd have to pull up that letter, but usually those are letters they're not really to us. We get a copy of them and they're, I don't know that particular one, what it said.
yeah, I don't remember that one. I do read all of them and they're 99%, they're all perfunctory. And I sent you a letter saying that our seepage monitoring will take place next month. I get a letter back saying, okay, that's all right with us, but make sure it happens, and then goes back and forth.
Yeah.
And so we
that's
get all of
typically
those.
what we see, yeah.
Yeah. Now, I do look at it enough because I know there's some constituents that up along that area along the dams there that they really want to be in touch. So if I see anything that resembles even approximately, I don't make the decision if it's good enough or not. I just send it and let the constituent take a look at it, like Darcy and Christie.
Okay, I'm good. Thank you.
You know, Steve, you brought up a point on lobbyists. One of the things I'm looking for back. I always harper back to what I used to do, but that was the career. We wouldn't always go back for like a conference function. Sometimes we just took a contingent from Washington State that just went back and spent 2 days with the lobbyist and did the appointments and stuff. And sometimes I think those are much more efficient. And that'd be one of the things I look at back there. If I don't see a ton of value in the NACO thing, it may be where I suggest once or twice a year, one of us goes back and just spends a couple days with our lobbyists and hike the hill and not do the conference thing. Could easily evolve to that.
At some point, Mr. Chairman, would it be interesting to talk a little bit about your LSC time this week?
My what?
LSC,
Oh, yeah, I can touch on that a little bit.
okay.
The homeless point and count time occurred I believe, a couple weeks ago. What's your expectations on any reporting?
Don't think it happened a couple of weeks ago. Gina, are you on?
Maybe it was a different location or something.
Not seeing her.
Why don't
You-
why don't you go ahead and ask the follow-on question? Were you just asking if it had occurred or were you gonna ask more on that?
I was only at had it occurred, and what was your expectations on a report?
I'm going to try and get hold of Gina and see if she can answer that.
Maybe there's another date that's coming up.
Yeah, we're gonna try and get her and see if we can answer that, Ron. My colleague, referenced, I sit on the Legislative Steering Committee for WASAC, Washington State Association of Counties. During session, they have meetings every 2 weeks, and I was at it last Thursday up in Olympia. And I expressed, and I try to be honest with you guys. I'll be honest with you. I find it frustrating. Because you have this is our lobby group for Washington counties. And there's some things they do well, but what you find is, what I find frustrating is you have pages and pages of bills, and if you know me, we have stacks of rules and regs that have been created by bills to fix something, but nothing ever gets fixed. And the fix to me is to get rid of the bill that caused the problem, but they never see it that way. They see, well, we need to adjust it here and get more bills. And if I'm WASAC, I'm going, let's just get these stuff out of here. Let's not do anything more, but their take more is, and I struggle with this, their take more is, well, let's adjust it so we can work with it and make sure that they fund it for the counties. And if you know me at all, I struggle with that. So it's a tough thing to kind of sit on, but yeah. So I don't always think, you know, it wouldn't be the use of time that I would do. I would say, let's quit putting these bills in. Let's strike the issues and not just, well, if you're gonna do this to the counties, make sure you send them money.
You know, there's the immediate, we pay WASAC to be we're members, we pay WASAC. But I was gonna tie something together. Let me, will I be able to revive it? I think the point is we pay them to protect us, if you will, from bad bills, but in fact, they seem to work the opposite. So I'm wondering, do you have any thoughts about the future of us in WASAC?
I think there's questions on that. Right now, the big counties, King, you could say King, Pearson, Snohomish. Right now, King doesn't feel like they're representative and doesn't pay dues. And Pearson, Snohomish are indicating that may be the road they take too. That there's a feeling that they don't have a big enough vote and it's too dominated by the smaller counties that don't have the issues they have. So WASAC's working real hard as to how to include everybody and do that. So, I mean, the reality of it is, if your big counties get out of it, then the funds, that's the major funds for WASAC. And so then the smaller counties got to decide what they want to do. So I think at some point in time, there's going to be a restructure of some sort in that whole thing. And I'm not sure where that heads out, but it could be to the point where
It,
small counties maybe take on and do stuff themselves. I don't know.
yeah, it's kind of a strange thing, and I don't think there's good reason in a lot of this. The counties are, they pay on a per capita basis. So somebody like King County pays much more than Cowlitz County. But Cowlitz County gets one vote,
One vote.
King County gets one vote. And that's where their gripe is. Now, what's interesting, and you can understand that. What's interesting though, is that on a per capita political power base, the big counties already have it. We all know they dominate the legislature, and so they want, in addition to dominating that, they want to dominate Wasac itself. And to me, that means there is no Wasac. There might be a caucus of small counties at some point that would replace Wasac. I'd be interested in that, but I don't see that Wasac has really helped us. And then one other thing about that, I've talked to some legislators, our legislators, and said, do you ever consult with Wasac on something? The answer has been uniformly no. So I'm confused there as to what Wasac actually does for us.
It's a little bit of a good old boys club. Gina? Let me
Yeah,
take
go ahead.
Gina real
Go
quick.
ahead.
Is that okay? We had a question, and hopefully I get this right. There was a question on, what do you have, Ron? Maybe the point of time count on homeless, if it's happened, and what we expect out of that, is that? What kind of report? What kind of report? Demographics, whatever.
Okay. Yes, the point in time was, there's a specific date set, which was last week. We have a couple days flexibility that we can get surveys completed. The county is kind of responsible for attempting to count individuals living unsheltered, and then the state pulls data from the homeless management information system for the sheltered count. So the overall point in time counts unsheltered and sheltered individuals in the community. It's not perfect. There's there's some programs that aren't using the data system, for example. So there's some asterisks when we talk about the point in time count, but we anticipate we're getting.
Excuse me, Gina, I'm confused. When you say some organizations don't use the software, a point in time I thought was, I'm going out there with a clipboard because, and I'm just going to count people. What software do you mean by that then?
Yeah, so we do that piece for the unsheltered portion. There's also a sheltered count, and that's the state pulls data for the sheltered count from the homeless management information system. We know there's some projects that don't use that system, so there's not all of the sheltered projects get counted in the count.
So in this case, because it's trying to address homelessness, the sheltered versus unsheltered, could you give us a definition?
Yeah, so a sheltered project would be like emergency shelter or transitional housing. An unsheltered would be living in a place not meant for human habitation. It goes off the HUD definitions for that piece.
So if I live in a car, I would be considered homeless.
Correct. Unsheltered. Yes. Yep.
Unsheltered. Thank you.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. So we're getting surveys back now. We've been working with some of the local homeless outreach teams locally to help us complete surveys. So we anticipate we're getting those back, and we'll start data entry on those. There's kind of a process that happens where we're making sure we're unduplicating. We also wait for the state to share with us the sheltered data, and we try to take a look and go through that piece. We usually don't see that sheltered data until late spring, early summer. And then we try to go through that too and make sure that everything looks accurate. And then we develop a report too that just reflects the sheltered and unsheltered count. We have our 2022 report is posted up on our website. So if anyone wants to take a look, actually our 2023 report is also up now on our website. So if anyone wants to take a look at the last year's report, those are posted on our website. So we'll do the same for this year for 2024 when we get all of the data in.
Another question, when you say point in time, how much time is it? So I start with my clipboard and I start today and I go only today, or I go into the week?
Yeah, we have a little bit of flexibility there as long as, so about up to a week. So there's a specific date and then we can go about a week past as long as you're asking the individual where they stayed on that particular night. But we have about a week to collect that information. So we could ask, where did you stay last Thursday night, and complete the survey that way.
So if we're doing the survey to going out to find the unsheltered, how many people in the county would be involved with trying to collect the data?
The homeless outreach teams we've been working with, let's see, a handful, maybe a dozen. We also work with the Woodland Action Council down in Woodland, and they'll complete surveys as well with people that come in and access services if they're living unsheltered. So we also work with them. So it's not a ton, but a good, probably about a dozen, I would guess. I don't know.
And they could be collecting the data over a span of 5 days or something like that.
Yes.
How do we assure no duplication, or at least small duplication?
Yeah, so we really try to make sure we have at least a name and date of birth, ideally, so that we can unduplicate that way. There are some people that don't want to share their information, and that's where we could potentially run into a small amount of duplication.
But it is a small amount in your opinion.
Most people are willing to share at least their name, if not their name and date of birth. It's more rare. We just get a small handful of surveys usually where individuals don't want to share their information.
So if somehow you could really know the truth on that, would you expect it to be an undercount or an overcount on what you produce?
I would lean more towards an undercount, probably.
Okay, thank you.
Ron, did that answer
Yeah.
kind of what you were looking for?
One of the demographics on that we've made a big issue of is community house on Broadway and the quote homeless students. So I presume some way or another they go to the schools or somewhere or another to see what students are really homeless, sheltered, unsheltered, whatever.
So that's kind of the information you're
That would be one
looking
of the
for.
demographics. of
Gotcha.
The homeless.
Okay,
Mhm.
So, well, I mean, we're making it's a big issue here in the cities and in the county. So we're going to be very interested, especially this year, in the report and that the repeatability of the report. A report gives you a point in time, but if there isn't a process and a procedure that you basically duplicate every year, then your numbers have quite a flexibility or range, et cetera. So I look forward to Gina and the group giving the report and then also talking about the process and how it was accomplished. And I'm sure you as commissioners will be equally important as well as the city councils. It's going to be, I project it'll be a big, big issue this year.
A thing that makes things a bit complicated comparing from one year to the next is the definitions of homelessness have changed, and Gina can tell you now the definition of what a homeless, what a student homeless is. Please.
Yeah. And yeah, and for the point in time count, we're mostly looking at adults. There are some children counted if they're part of a household, but the point in time count that we're charged with doing isn't trying to count homeless students, for example. So the school system through their McKinney-Vento program tries to count, but it does have a different definition of what's considered homeless. So the school system will count students who are couch surfing, for example. Our definition when we're counting adults doesn't count that as homeless. So our count doesn't include sort of a representation of homeless students in that sense because the definitions are different.
Okay, so there's always the perspective, and I don't want to say it is, but the fox in the hen house counting the chickens. So that we have regularity and a good definition.
A good source of information for the students who are experiencing homelessness in Cowlitz County is to go straight to the school districts and talk to the liaisons who are in charge of all the students who are experiencing homelessness. And there's one at Longview School District, Kelso School District, Castle Rock School District, because I'm in the process of getting more information from them directly.
Right. So a very important point of the whole count is, are we getting better or are we getting worse, or why are the numbers changing over time, to gauge ourselves in all the millions and millions and millions we're throwing at the problem, and have we really identified what the problem is?
Yeah, I think you hit it on a spot that concerns me, which is it beneficial for me to overcount or to undercount if I'm the counter? So I count things in my favor. Typically, that's whether it's a conscious bias or not, it's there. And there was a time in my life when I lived with my grandparents, I would have been called by the current definition homeless. There was a time when one of my nieces was having trouble with their family. She moved in with us for a couple of weeks or so, a cooling off period. She would have been counted homeless, yet she was well taken care of at home and well taken care of it at my house. It's beneficial to call them homeless because it does, like your concern, it does imply more funding to take care of a problem that doesn't really exist.
Thank you, Gina, for jumping on and helping us with that. I appreciate it.
No problem. I'm happy to sit down and chat with anyone interested in hearing more. There are a lot of caveats with the point in time count. So please feel free to reach out if you want to chat more about it.
Okay.
Thank you, Gina.
Back to the Wasatch issue. As you were talking about King County and other counties, and maybe Cowlitz County, this is an age-old problem. It was going on 40 years ago that some of these organizations, you reach a point where you maintain a membership just to protect yourself. So you know what's going on with other counties. And if you withdraw from an organization, and it's sad that they get to the point where you have to be worried about what they might do if you're not there, if you're not a member, it becomes a self-serving thing for certain groups or certain members. You know, you have to keep an eye on what the heck's going on so you don't get shot in the back when you're not looking. So it'd be interesting. Ultimately, it'll be interesting to see how that turns out for King County and for Cowlitz County.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. You hope that your representatives to the State House would help you, but it's a risk.
Yeah. Good luck.
Anything else? You know, I'll touch on something real quick, and the conversation with Gina reminded me of it. A few weeks back, we had a freezing event, and there's some scrambling to find additional shelters for those instead of them being out in the cold. And we had a request come through, and we sent some money to one of the places. And my colleague had some questions on that, and I'll tell you, I heard from two different sources, and there are people I believe to be true that witnessed. And you've heard me talk about, I don't like people that just chase money. I want to chase solutions. Heard from two different people on a shelter that was open that now this is to get people out of freezing rain and cold, that they stood in line for 45 minutes out in the freezing rain and cold while they could get their name and stuff so they could collect the money. Now, when that comes to me again, I'm going to have some questions on that, because that's chasing money. That's not chasing solutions, and it's not acceptable. And my colleague had every right to question some of that, because and once again, I have full faith in these people, what they saw, and I believe it to be true, that if you're going to help people, you help people. You don't do that kind of stuff, and those questions will be raised next time they come to us.
I appreciate that. And if I could add, at that time, it was also inquired, could the county open up a facility? And depending on the circumstances, I think we would probably team up and say, well, we're not going to let somebody die out in the street there. We'll open up the GMR. We might even open this up, and the benches there useful. It wouldn't be my first choice, because it does permit people not to plan, and that is the problem we have when we know somebody else will pick up the tab. The thing that generally irks me is that for certainly in the past, I remember one vote 3 years ago where, yeah, I lost that vote also. It was the organization not only asked to be paid today for the shelter today, but they asked for the previous year, and we had already funded them in part in the previous year. It's all a game to chase the funds. Bad enough that it's cloaked in, this is charity. Well, I've already told you what Antonin Scalia said about charity at the hands of the government. And at some point, I think we're just being abused. And if you want to see somebody very sensitive to abuse, you're looking at them now. Yeah, I'm very sensitive about me personally being abused, but if I'm responsible for you not being abused, then I'm really a bulldog.
Yeah. Yeah, I just so I'm clear, I'm not opposed to helping this, but when you commit to help, then you need to do it. And having people stand 45 minutes out in the weather you're trying to get them out of is not the right way to go about it.
So was this an issue where in order to get money, they had to have names and addresses and information? Why couldn't they have collected it after they were inside? I guess I'm not understanding. Was there some rule or regulation they were trying to fulfill rather than to meet the need of the people that are out in the cold? Now they're meeting the need to get the finances.
Yeah. I don't have a answer to that. I'm sure they had to have information on people to put in and collect the money, but why you couldn't have done that inside, I don't
Yeah,
know,
what you're
Steve.
telling me just makes my blood boil.
I can guarantee you if like Commissioner Morton said, if we were to open up GMR or something, they'd have come straight in. There's no way I'd have had them standing outside.
That's ridiculous. Anyway, okay.
You know, in the past, I've had jobs that had me working at night, and I go about 9 PM to Jack in the Box or something like that, and there'd be a guy standing out there saying food, he's hungry. So I go in and I buy my meal, and I buy the exact same thing for the individual. I take it out to him, and he puts it aside. He looks disgusted. He wanted cash. He did not want food.
Yeah, I've been there.
Yep.
Years ago, one time, a gentleman who was very well inebriated struggled into a place where I was working. I was on strike and I got a part-time job. And he stumbled in the door and was begging for money for a cab to go home. And I couldn't afford it, but I pulled $2 out of my wallet and gave it to him. And the gentleman who I was working for said, Steve, now go back over to the door and watch him. And I went back over to the doorway and I watched him stagger down the street and go back in the tavern. And the gentleman I was working for said, well, next time call the cab and give the cab the money. And I went, lesson learned. So since then, I don't give cash to anybody. I will go buy them a hamburger. I don't mind when they say that they're hungry. I don't mind trying to help them, but I've had the same experience many times. You give them food and they'll set it on the ground. I just recently did that when I was going into Fred Meyer. There was a gentleman sitting there and I said, are you hungry? And he said, yes. I was in there and I picked up a package of barbecued chicken that was in there on their rack. I took it out and gave it to him, and I went and sat in my car and watched him, and he looked around and he opened up his backpack, slid the whole package in his backpack, closed it up. And I thought, well, he wasn't all that damn hungry because he didn't even open the thing. He just slid it in his backpack.
And the real thing, it's now a good time for that Antonin Scalia quote, when the transformation of charity into government entitlement produces donors with no heart and recipients with no gratitude. Now, you had the heart because you're not the government. You're using your own funds.
Yeah.
But the recipient,
You know, it should do so much and you never know how it's going to turn out, I guess.
yeah.
So as I was reading through the list of the open shelters that during the last cold spell, I don't know who was coming asking for money, but it was pointed out to me by somebody that, and they showed me the thing, for churches to maintain their tax exempt status, it mentions homeless, and it's part of the kind of law that goes with that tax exemption. So I'm not, I guess you don't want to name names, but if it's a church coming for that money to help, that's really kind of wrong. They are supposed to be the ones doing that stuff. And really, we probably would have just half the gosh darn or less, maybe no homeless problem if the churches nationwide were actually doing what's in the charter for being tax exempt.
Any other? Okay. Thanks for coming to visit us. And remember, next week, you got the week off. So enjoy it. We are adjourned.